Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gunnar here. Now, welcome back to the channel. It's September 30th. We're getting closer and closer to the best time of the year to be in a tree stand. Now, I kind of want to go over some things that I go through, a little bit of the process that I go through when I'm deciding how I'm going to approach hunting in October and where I'm going to be hunting, what I'm going to be prioritizing, and the strategy that goes in behind that, right? And so the first thing that I'm going to be taking into consideration is my pressure aspect of things, right? So I've hunted 3 or 4 times so far this season in September here. And the main thing that I'm keeping in the back of my head is, okay, how is this going to affect my hunt later on in the season, right? When you're hunting early, you're hunting in kind of the dog days, those end days of the summer, there's not really high movement probability when it comes to big deer on their feet during daylight. It's not a high percentage sit. I'm taking that into consideration, and I'm not going to my best spots right now. And that's going to be the same strategy that I use all the way up until that early pre-rut stages in the 18th, 19th, 20th of October. Until then, I'm not touching any of my best spots. I'm going into a very safe location, maybe an area that I can shoot a doe without a lot of disturbance, and at the same time an area that I can get away with hunting a couple times and I'm not going to bugger anything up. You know, if there is a buck that's going to be coming through 30, 45 minutes, an hour after dark, I'm going to be long gone out of there. I'm not going to have a big intrusion getting out. I'm not going to be blowing up a food plot on my way out, stuff like that. So I'm taking into consideration how impactful is this hunt, because I know the priority level of the hunt isn't super high. I'm just trying to maybe kill a doe early season and maybe get some eyes on how these deer are utilizing this area of the property. Maybe I'm trying to get a little bit more experience in a spot that maybe it's a new stand location I'm looking at. That's kind of the idea behind me hunting early season here, right? Like I said, I've hunted 3 or 4 times. 2 of those spots have been fairly new stand locations that I'm just trying to feel out, okay, how are these deer moving through here? And what can I get away with? What's the ideal wind, right? I didn't have high anticipation of seeing bucks or getting a shot at a big buck. My whole idea behind a couple of those sits was, okay, well, I don't know what's going on here necessarily. I don't know how they're moving. The cameras can only tell me so much. What's right in front of the camera is all the camera's gonna tell you. You know, you don't know what's happening 10, 15 yards behind the camera or all the way around in that area. That's one of the biggest things that I think guys get fooled on, is if these deer aren't on camera, they're not there. That's a big falsity when it comes to using those trail cameras. They're only telling you a small portion of the story that's going on in that area, right? And I've seen, and I've talked to you guys about videos in the past where deer actually are going to figure out where your cameras are. It doesn't matter how good you place them. All of these cameras make a little bit of noise. They have a little bit of red glow. These deer live in the woods. They know what's natural and what's not. And any time that you put something unnatural in the timber in a deer's home, it's like setting a brand new set of car keys that you don't own that brand of car right on your dresser right next to your bedroom. It's gonna raise some red flags. They're gonna question, okay, why are those there? What's going on here? You're gonna be tipped off to it. It's gonna be unnatural. It's gonna catch your eye, right? That's exactly how a deer feels when it sees something unnatural, whether that a trail camera, big base of a ladder stand, whatever it may be. So it's very important to hide those things the best you can. You can only do so much though, right? So back on topic, but I'm paying attention to what is the impact of me going out and hunting right now. And at the same time, how is it gonna affect down the road into my season, right? You know, we're not just hunting a couple times and killing a buck. It doesn't normally work out that way. It's kind of a long journey to get to that high roller coaster peak of shooting that buck you're after, right? And so I'm playing that chess game where I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I hunt and enjoy the thing that I love the most, which is hunting and being out there with the animals and seeing these deer. How can I do that the most, but at the same time create the least amount of disturbance, right? Well, that's having different stand locations for these different scenarios. So I have multiple stand locations that could potentially produce a big buck. I mean, most of the stand locations that I have, that I sit in, at some time in the year could produce a big buck. But I'm looking at it from the scheme of things where, Okay, do they have a high percentage of producing a big buck right now? Not really, but they have a massive opportunity to kill a doe and at the same time be very minimal with my impact, with my disturbance going in there and killing one. Because some of these areas are drawing deer at different stages of the year, right? You know, we talk about the big over mature canopy timber being highly attractive in those summer months and then early fall. But as things start to die off and dry away, the leaves start to fall, they're shifting towards that more high stem count security cover that, you know, we're trying to prioritize on the farm, but that at the same time, having the diversity of all those different stages of cover, the different stages of growth, are gonna keep those deer on your property at all times of the year. So there's a good benefit to having all of the different stages of canopy cover on your property. You're gonna wanna have some of that over mature canopy. They're gonna be hitting that, utilizing that more so in your early stages of fall. And then you go into the middle of the rut where they're kind of using everything. They're just running wild, right? And then as you get into the later stages of the season, they're shifting towards the more high stem count cover because they have felt that pressure and there isn't as much foliage in the woods. So they're gravitating to that more high stem count brushy cover that they feel secure in. And so the whole idea behind what I've been doing here lately is just trying to figure out what these deer are doing on spots that I don't necessarily know for sure. Maybe I've got a camera on a couple of them, but like I said, those only tell half the picture, a very small percentage of what's actually happening in that area. So to figure out how deer utilize an area, you actually have to sit there and watch it and figure it out, play that chess game of, okay, the percentage of if I see a buck and me getting a shot, figure that out. Okay, how many does are coming through here? How far away are they? Is the stand in the right spot? Do I have a good shot angle? Are they quartering to me? Are they quartering away? Presenting a good shot? Do I have time? Do I have cover to draw my bow back? Things like this, figuring this out. So when you do go in there and hunt, potentially after a big buck in the later stages of October and early November here, you have all this stuff figured out. You know that, okay, once they step behind this bush, now I have to draw my bow, because chances are once they get through there, I'm not gonna have another opportunity to draw back and make that kind of movement, especially when we're dealing with a little bit more hunter pressure in the woods, when these deer are starting to get a little bit edgy. The season's been going on for about a month. These deer know they're being hunted now. So taking that guesswork out, you've already worked out the kinks, right? Like I've talked about on my social media a lot. I talk about going through and working out those kinks before the prime time, right? Because if you haven't stepped foot in the woods until prime time, late October, early November, you're gonna be kind of rusty, right? I would imagine, you know, we haven't had any test drives, we haven't had any trial runs, getting up and down the stand, putting up a hang-on stand, getting in the right spot, getting set up in a timely manner, making sure you're staying quiet, getting all your gear in the tree in the right spot so you don't have any mishaps when you are hunting for real, banking on this sit, producing a buck because the weather's perfect, the bucks are doing what they're supposed to do in that specific location that you're hunting. You don't want to be rusty at that time of the year, right? So that's the whole idea. I'm using this time, this early season, and when the weather is not ideal, I'm sitting in these areas where I'm not concerned about applying a little bit of pressure. The chances that a big buck is utilizing that area right now, pretty minimal. So I'm not concerned about my disturbance. What I'm trying to do is hone in my skills, refine my skills from the long off season. Try to get back in hunting condition, right? You know, getting in those habits of sitting still, controlling my movements, staying calm when a deer is coming, knowing when to move, when not to move, where to hang my bow, where my camera arm needs to be, how to move slow enough but efficient enough to get ready for that shot opportunity when it presents itself. So working out those kinks, taking those stands for a test drive, seeing how the deer are utilizing those areas, but at the same time applying minimal pressure, doing what I need to do, enjoying the outdoors, getting the rust knocked off, seeing how these deer are utilizing different areas that I haven't had the experience with yet, but still remaining very little pressure, keeping those deer uneducated on what I'm doing, you know, applying pressure in the right strategic locations, using the wind, not hunting a marginal wind early. That doesn't pay dividends, right? You know, playing the wind to a T right now is so key, because one bad sit, when you have a movement of a lot of deer coming to a food source, one bad sit can blow up that food source for 10, 12 days, right? You might be able to get away with it a couple times in the early season, but once you start creeping into October here, those deer aren't gonna start tolerating that. They know what non-pressure and what pressured area feels like. These deer know, especially in Wisconsin, when they're being hunted and when they aren't being hunted. And so keeping them uneducated to the fact that they're being hunted for as long as possible into the season is going to pay dividends, especially when you're hunting your big deer. If you're cluing in those deer early season, they sure are not going to come out during daylight in that middle time frame, that pre-rut time frame in October here when the weather gets right. So you've already educated these deer that they're being hunted, so they're nocturnal going in until the peak of the rut where they're running wild with their hair on fire. You're not seeing any daylight activity. That tells you that you've overpressured your land, you've done something wrong, you've educated these deer that they don't feel safe and secure during daylight. So this is a very important time frame where you're not burning out stands, you're not overpressuring certain areas. So if you think of deer movement in a big buck activity window as a balloon, anytime you push into an area and he senses that, he's shifting that balloon farther away, right? So applying strategic amounts of pressure in just low-key areas, keeping your wind to a T, not sitting the same stand night in and night out, you know, making sure that you keep your land low pressure, but at the same time, like I'm doing, still getting out and enjoying these beautiful nights, these beautiful evenings, watching a lot of deer. You know, it's not cold yet, so we're kind of still in that time frame where we can enjoy sitting there without getting cold, being uncomfortable, basically just deer watching, right? And if the opportunity presents itself, get ourselves a doe, get some meat in the freezer, but not burning out the property for the good days ahead once we get into the middle of October, end of October, early November, when those big bucks are rolling on their feet.